the answer to that was Bruce was in the makeup chair for 3 hours every morning getting a slight prosthetic applied, and we just picked a couple key features to change, because we knew we weren't going to transform Joe to look like a young Bruce, so we figured if we can just do a little bit to the nose, a little bit to the lips, just to give enough of a handhold so that you can go with it. And so Joe was a great sport and went through that every single morning. But also, and you guys got a little bit of a sense from that, Joe's performance in the movie is really what ends up selling it. He's he's doing young Bruce, and he's doing it's not just imitation though. He's really giving a performance that doesn't seem like he's mimicking Bruce Willis, but it seems like a character that could be a young Bruce Willis. And it's kind of, I'm so excited for you guys to see the whole movie, because Joe's performance in that regard is just kind of this incredible hat trick to watch.
Thanks.
Hey, anytime.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Joe, because there are moments in there where you see that you go, wow, that is a young Bruce Willis. There are certain moments where you've captured him completely, and yet you also have created an original character out of whole cloth. Talk about that process for you as an actor, how you got that done.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a good mimic, to be honest. I don't do good impressions or anything.
Do your British accent. Do it.
No. But
no, you don't want to hear it. He's not a good mimic.
She would remind me on a daily basis. I can't do a good British
When he was like, morning, gun that, and I was like,
oh, Mary Poppins, stepping toys.
I think we found our next project. Reboots.
Yeah, I didn't think an impersonation would be appropriate anyway. It would sort of just be distracting. So I just, try to internalize them, I guess, and do something that made sense to me and felt real. I watched all his movies on repeat. I took the audio from his movies and put them on my iPod so I could listen to them. Bruce also... he recorded some of my voiceover lines. He recorded himself saying them and sent me the tape so that I could listen to what it would sound like. But really, the most I learned from him, I think, was just hanging out with him. He's a super cool guy. It's too bad he's not here, but because you guys would love him. He's a sweetheart, and he loved this job. He was clearly there to play, and I think, and I'm a fan of his. I've been a fan of his ever since I was a kid, and I think this is one of the coolest things he's done in a long time. Yeah, it was just a pleasure all around.
Rian, you mentioned you wrote the role with Joe in mind. What was it about him that said to you, he's the looper?
Well, really, it was just I wanted to work with my good friend. I mean, we've stayed good friends since we made Brick together. So
that's awesome.
Thanks. And we've just been dying to work together again. And it's always best to make movies with your friends. It's always best to work with your friends. And so, and I also knew that this role was going to call for that kind of extraordinary performance that we described before, and someone who's willing to throw themselves into this total transformation. And Joe, that's what he, that's what he loves to do, and that's what he's so good at. So it just made sense.
Emily, what was it about the project that drew you to it? Why did you want to get involved?
Well, the script initially was the first thing. I think I kind of signed on in my head after 30 pages, even without being given the part. I was like, I'm obviously doing this because it's incredible. And so I read it a few times before I met Rian, because it is rich in complexity, and in the emotion of the piece is so complex as well. And it's he writes in such a singular way. It's something that's not derived from anything else you've ever seen, and that's so exciting and rare when it happens. So I met Rian and kind of strong armed him into giving it to me. Literally.
Rian, I'm glad Jeff Daniels mentions this in the movie, but when you watch a time travel movie, there are those sort of loops that you get in your head where it's logically, and in terms of narrative, it's just almost insane to try to figure it out. It gets a little crazy. You addressed that in the film. Was that a concern when you were writing and then shooting the film, was keeping all that stuff straight?
Yeah, definitely, especially because the movie, it has a really, at the end of the day, it's not really about, unlike a great movie like Primer, for instance, where a large, give it up for Primer, right? A large part of the joy of that movie is digging into the complexity of all the time travel. This movie is not that. In this movie, my model for how to use time travel was very much like the first Terminator. It's a very different film than the first Terminator, but time travel sets up this situation with these characters and then gets out of the way. And it's really about the situation and these people dealing with it for the rest of the movie that drives it.
And that great premise of what would you say to yourself when you were younger, if you could, and vice versa, what would you tell yourself, years in the future? It's just fascinating stuff. Okay, let's ask some questions from the audience. I'm sure you guys have things you want to talk to these people about, so we're going to turn up the lights and turn on the microphone. And these two have traveled from the past to the future. Apparently they are...
Rock and roll. Wow. Nice.
This question is for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. What is the best part about working with Emily Blunt?
Please.
And if you would, the worst part, please. I'd like to know both parts of it.
I think probably that she just makes me laugh all the time. Let's face it, most pretty girls aren't funny. No offense or anything, but it's
Because they don't have to be.
maybe, I don't know, but it's always
Oh my
important.
god! Oh my god! Did everyone hear what he said?
That was just a joke.
I hate to make a sweeping generalization, and I'm often wrong, and she's a brilliant counterexample. I don't know. We just had the best time, I don't know. That's an answer.
Thanks so much. Hello, sir. What's your question?
Hello. Are we recording?
Nice.
This question is for Joe regarding collaborating with Bruce Willis. Aside from your mutual fondness for Levi 501, can you tell us a story, an interesting story, it doesn't have to be tiny, about something you learned or experienced from collaborating with Bruce Willis?
First of all, thank you. You just made like 6 hit record references in one question. I appreciate that. That was very sweet. You know what I think is striking about Bruce is he's actually a soft-spoken man.
He talks like this. This is how he has a conversation.
You know why? Because he doesn't want people, other people listening to him, and also he doesn't have to speak up. And I think it goes to show, a lot of guys, big macho guys that, talk loud and, like to have a big presence in a room. They're sort of scared that they don't have a presence in a room. And a guy like Bruce, who's not scared of anything, I imagine, he doesn't have to raise his voice. He doesn't have to make sure that people know he's there.
He talks like this. This is how he talks.
And I thought that was really, that struck me.
I remember I sent my dad's favorite picture I've ever sent him of working on a movie, where Bruce was covered in blood, as you saw images in that clip, covered in blood, and I was sitting at that time between takes in the sun, and I think he had concerns for my pale British skin, and he came over with literally a flowery parasol. I don't know where he had found it. It was like this flowery umbrella. And he came and sat next to me, and we talked about just such nice things. We were talking about love and all kinds of stuff and family. And the photographer took a picture, and it's him covered in blood holding a parasol, shading me. That's him. He's a doll. He is a doll.
Joe, you're a big movie star, and you've got all the success in the world, but when you're working with somebody like Bruce Willis, even you must be like, wow, this is pretty cool, I'm working with Bruce Willis. There has to be that fanboy moment. You're working with an icon. How long does it take you to get through that on the other side so you can work together as equals?
Well, really, as soon as you start working, I think, because once you're doing that, none of that other shit really matters anymore, So it's really about the scene. And he was really into the work. You could clearly tell that he had put a lot of thought into what he wanted to do and was really excited to do it. And that was exciting to me because, he's done a lot of movies. He's done a lot of great movies. And to see him get excited and get inspired and passionate about working obviously drew me right in. So, once we were actually doing the work, I think all the iconography sort of
What's your question?
My question's for Joe, and I was just wondering, with all of your independent creative work, like with Hit Record and your shorts and your music, is it like a circular inspiration for you, or do you just separate your movie characters from your shorts and stuff like that?
No, I don't separate it at all. I think it's all kind of one creative process, and Looper is a big action sci-fi movie, but Ryan and I did a much smaller budgeted movie before called Brick, and I don't know, you guys already applauded for it, so you don't have to this time. Appreciate it. And I think the same sensibility remained from Brick to Looper, because the important thing isn't the size of the budget or how many people see it. To me, the important thing is the intention of the filmmaker. Ryan loves movies. That's why he's doing this. As opposed to, some movies get made and their goal is to make money, which is just not as interesting, as someone really telling a story from their heart that they want to tell. And to me, that's what's important. So whether it's, whether you're doing a little, video on your laptop and contributing it to some collaboration on Hit Record, or you're making The Dark Knight Rises, that's your chance to applaud for that movie. And by the way, Chris Nolan's got a similar sensibility, even though he's making these huge movies. He started with smaller movies and he maintains that sensibility. So to me, that's what's important is the intention.
Thanks so much for your question. Next question.
Am I on?
You
Hi. So my question is for Joe, but I love you, Emily. Thank you. And so anyway, in regards to the makeup and following with Bruce, was it an extra challenge for you to have to become your character both mentally and physically?
Both mentally and physically. I didn't work out for shit on this movie. Yeah, I guess, sorry. Was it challenging for you to prepare mentally and physically, Emily?
Well, I mean, I think it's always a challenge whether you're having to portray someone else like he was. He was having to develop this character with Bruce Willis's essence in mind, and that, I think that is really challenging, not to make it an impersonation, which you definitely did not do. And I think, no, I actually mean that in like the best way, that it wasn't, I wasn't being rude, that you definitely did not nail. No, I mean it in the best way, that it wasn't some cheap impersonation, it was an embodiment of him and what he's about, But I think for me with this role, it was definitely a challenge and a departure for me, to play someone who isn't from where I'm from and is nothing like me and looks not like me, and
we're talking about me transforming. She's so different in this movie too. Like, you're unlike anything I've ever seen you do. It's really cool. Actually.
That's cool, though. I had to, the hardest thing physically was learning how to chop wood really convincingly. I had logs transported to my house in LA to learn how to do them. Yeah.
Ryan, we talked about the Brick and some of your smaller work. When you increase in size and scope, like this film does, when you get a chance to create your own world, is it intimidating as a director that you have? Is it more responsibility? Is it more work?
Well, I mean, abstractly, I guess it is, but the truth is, and Joe said a little something like this. At the end of the day, whether you're making a movie with your video camera and your friends, or whether you're making a movie like Looper, you're telling a story with a camera and a couple of actors. And the language is the same, the process is fundamentally the same, no matter how many people are standing around you. And so, once you get on set and actually start figuring out the scene, the scale of everything kind of doesn't matter. You're going after the same thing you were when you were goofing off with your friends in high school with a video camera, and you're using the same tools.
Just get better toys to play with?
Yeah, and better snacks on the craft service.
Hi there, what's your question?
Wow, my face is, okay. I just want to say, Joe, love all your work, fellow Francophile too. But this question's for both of you, Emily and Joe. Of all the projects you've done, which one has been the most challenging and then also the most fun?
I feel that this is the best movie I've been a part of, this one. I will say that, it's true. And it was, I'm very lucky, like very, very lucky to be in it, and I know that when I see it. But I think probably the most challenging one that I did was the Adjustment Bureau, because I had to learn how to dance, and that for me is like, it's like a fresh new hell, you know, every day. Trained to be a contemporary ballet dancer. So I think that one for me physically was so draining that I think I'd say that was the hardest.
A complete aside, but remarkable work in that, Emily, because I have a good friend who's a dancer, and she always talked about how convincing you were in that role.
Oh, good.
What nice work that was.
Oh, thank God, it's worth it then. Thanks.
And Joe, what role for you, other than this one, stands out as either critical, personally or professionally for you?
No, I really would say that just as far as my personal take on my own acting work, my favorite actors are the ones who really disappear into their characters. Like actors like Daniel Day-Lewis or Gary Oldman or Meryl Streep, or people who when you watch them in a movie, you don't see the actor, you see the character that they're playing, and that's what I aspire to when I go to work. And I think this movie, Looper, is the one in which I've achieved it the best. And I'm so proud of this particular movie. And as far as challenging, yeah, it was hard. This movie was pretty hard. Not only was it, just physically to have all that makeup on you is hard. It's makes everything harder. But then, trying to embody Bruce fucking Willis. But it didn't feel hard. I hate to call it like the biggest challenge, because it was just so much fun every day, coming to work with people that I love and doing something that I love to do. I'm very lucky to get to do it. And as hard as it was really more than anything, just a lot of fun.
Ryan, I was glad to see Jeff Daniels in there too. Speaking of great actors, he's one of my favorites. Terrific stuff.
Yeah.
Just time for a couple more questions, and then we're going to have to say goodbye. Yes, sir?
The movie looks astounding, guys. Thank you. And I love all the hit and record love today. I was wondering for Joe, when you're preparing for a role as physical as these ones have been since Inception and Don John's coming up, does it affect you mentally? Like, does it help you when you're physically preparing, guide you through the character? Does that make sense? Did I phrase that well?
Sure. I don't know. I personally think that the whole distinction between mind and body is a little faulty. I think you think and you feel with more than just your brain. Your whole body is part of that experience, and I think acting has actually been illuminating for me in understanding that. So I think they're sort of inseparable. I don't know what you think.
I agree, yeah, completely.
Ryan?
Absolutely. Well, and even with even with something, there's obviously this is an extreme example of transformation, but even in Brick, I mean, some of the first things we talked about were the voice and finding the specific cadence and the jacket and his posture and the exterior. I feel like kind of gives you some clues in how to get into the interior.
All right, time for one more question.
My question is for Ryan, and I apologize, it sounds a bit Nushi and film student, even though I'm old. The tone of Brick is so powerful, and to watch it is to see a screenplay that seems different from the others. And Emily mentioned this was singular, but I wonder how much of that is synergy between performance and what you see on the paper, because it seems that Joe is a very powerful actor in everything he's been in, and I just wondered how much you bring to that, and if that's why you wanted to work with him on this.
Thanks for those kind words. It's really kind. Yeah, I'm the luckiest son of a bitch in the world to have these guys. I mean, the truth is, with Brick specifically, you start with the writing, but it was kind of a whole second writing process. Not that we changed a word of the script, but there really was almost a second writing process, figuring out how these guys were going to, the actors in it were going to handle those words and how they were going to attack them and how we're going to make them feel real. That was just as intense a process as the writing. So it's, when you write, you spend all this time in a little room by yourself hashing this stuff out, and it's it's no fun at all. Writing is not fun. Writing kind of sucks, and you're dying for collaboration when you come out of that room. And so to have great actors like these guys to bounce off of and to see where they take it, to have them surprise you, that's both for Joe and also Emily. That's part of the reason she didn't have to twist my arm at all. I was so excited to have her in the movie because she surprises you so much in every role that she's in, and as a writer director especially, I think that's what you're looking for.
Well, to have this level of acting and writing in a film from this genre is what gets us all excited, and one of the reasons we're all here today. So thank you so much for coming and spending some time.
Thanks, everybody.